Hey, this is Chris with Destination Art, and today I'm playing with this painting, this scene right here. I took this picture when I was in Alaska. We took an Alaska cruise. It was awesome. I highly recommend it. So the things that I'm trying to work on in this painting, have, I did a couple of rainbow paintings lately, and I thought it was so much fun. And so what I was trying to do with this one was try to have a sort of rainbow as the background and then build any kind of scene on top of it and see if it made it more cohesive. And you'll see in the final painting that stripe of yellow kind of is still visible, but I think I painted over everything else. So once again, me over painting something. Yeah. So the idea for this background thing, that my experiment, right? So a lot of my art these days is experimentation because I'd like to sort of settle on a style that works for me, that's unique, and you can say it's my type of painting. Well, overworking a painting, that's my style. Woohoo! Anyway, I would like something light and airy, kind of watercolor lightness, but I haven't quite got there yet. So I finished with that background, and then I drew in ink because I'm just experimenting, right? So I drew the scene in ink and started painting in some details. So I started with a gray for the rocks, and then added some basic green. So I was laying in some lighter colors, and I tend to overwork, or I just I paint in a way that, I like it, but I would like to grow from that. Anyway, so here I am just adding a lot of details to, actually I'm adding like the underpainting to everything. So the base layer of color that I would like to be represented everywhere. And then there's this little pond back there, so I was trying to make sure that I gave the impression of water for that. And I did actually tweak the painting after I stopped recording because there were things I wanted to change on it. So anyway, so I struggled with sort of the forest that was behind the little pond there because there was a lot of detail. Well, there was trees. There were a couple of trees that were sticking up over the horizon line, but the rest of it, I just sort of wanted to be dark. And so I played with that a couple of times, laying in some color and then trying to get some different details. The moss on the front of my dog is walking around sniffing everything. So that, what am I doing here? So I record the voiceovers on my phone. Oh, I tried to put a pop of blue. That was sort of a mistake because I chose the wrong blue. It was very granulated and ended up making a water bloom, and yay. Blues can really get you in a lot of trouble if you aren't managing them well, and I think that was a poor decision to put that blue in that spot. There was moss on the front of the rocks that are in the foreground, and I tried to do some dry brushing with some greens, but then I later saw that it's actually, the moss was quite brown, and so you'll see later on that I add brown to the rocks in the back of the pond, and I'm doing that because I want sort of I kind of decided that the burnt sienna, that was going to be my sort of cohesive eye flow color. So I put pops of straight burnt sienna without any mixture on the rocks and sort of in the front. So I was hoping that that would sort of tie everything together, and that would be where your eye would bounce. So you would notice the burnt sienna, the bright burnt sienna, and that you would try to look for other colors of burnt sienna. So here I am. I think I'm painting in the pine trees. Yes. Painting in the pine trees and then trying to get a reflection in the water as well. My cat is sitting on me and he's scratching his ear or something. So in order to make water wet appear to be wet, you really need to work on your reflections and make sure that you are getting them in there properly. They don't have to be perfect. In fact, the less perfect they are, the better, but they do have to represent sort of what's above them. So I do later go in, actually I don't think I recorded that. I went in and I darkened sort of the rock line back there where everything was. So here I am trying to darken that area. Oh, foreground, just add some green in the front and stuff. I skipped forward a little bit. If you'll notice back behind the pond with those rocks there, I added a layer of a darker value green. And here I am adding just a little bit of darker value to distinguish between the different layers of rocks that they have. I also added some darker value under the moss in the front, and I sort of like smoothed that out a little bit. I cut all that out because you don't need to see every paint stroke that I do, right? Okay, so there's a mountain in the background. I should have probably painted that in first, but you know, I probably, well, challenged with values, you know, if you start in the back and work forward, you can always get lighter when you work forward. And I was bouncing all over the place with this painting, but you know, that's all right. It's okay. As watercolor dries, you know, it dries lighter, so I decided that I wanted to up the value of the trees in the distance, so I turned my painting upside down because it's easier for me to paint that way. You gotta do what you gotta do in order to paint, right? So anyway, so I added some darker shades, and I think that actually helped pop those rocks out a little bit, which I'm happy with how that turned out. And I went in with some darker values of gray so that I could distinguish and make some shadows on the rocks in behind the pond to make them a little more interesting. And finally adding those pops of burnt sienna all over the place. So yeah, that's what I did for this painting. Here is the finished painting. Have a great day. Please like and subscribe because it really helps.